First of all, the critical intervention components of methods that have been found useful, again, around the world and around the country. Some of the major work in this has been done in Norway. I never know how to pronounce this man's name, but there's a person by the name of Oljeweiss who has been presenting a lot of programs in the United States as well as in Norway, but he started his work in Norway. And what has been found is that programs that work are ones that establish standards for behavior, that clearly describe that indicate how kids are supposed to act with one another. They also have to then work to enforce those standards with effective consequences. And that, again, for kids to buy into the system, they do have to see that it's applied consistently and evenly and fairly. So the kids that are the objects of teasing, kids that are the objects of bullying, need to recognize that this is done with all the kids, popular or unpopular, parent of the student, of the parent-teacher association or not, kids that are good students versus not good students. The kids need to believe that this is a situation that is applied pretty fairly for them to be able to respect it and recognize that this should be done. And it does, the ones that really work are ones that do truly engage the entire community. And in the case of parents, some of that has to do with the process of recognizing that, aha, it might be my kid, and I might be asked to talk to my child about certain actions. And if I am a certain parent within the community, I need to be ready to be able to accept that as a possibility no matter what. That social status in the adult community should not make a difference about whether or not kids are brought up and talked about as engaging in some behaviors that are a problem. And the adults have to be willing to support that. Again, I think what's important for parents to recognize is that we need to constantly keep in mind that good kids can do bad things. And that even if you think your child is the sweetest, most wonderful child, under certain circumstances, something might happen. And kids make mistakes. And so the adults in the community have to be willing to kind of support this process and say, okay, if we have this policy, I need to be ready to be able to hear about some of the things my child may have done that need to be taught to and reviewed. It does have to be doing things with the popular kids in a different way. Instead of, in some circumstances where things get to be really negative and school situations that are really quite a problem, when the popular kids are leading the bullying and teasing, we have to be able to turn that on its head. And the most effective programs are ones in which they get the popular kids to kind of lead the way in terms of saying, look, this kind of action, this kind of review, this kind of behavior is not cool. This is not something that we want to be engaging in, and please don't do those kinds of things to kids in our class. And work on having the popular kids be the ones that kind of say, we're setting the standards that suggest that we should be cooperative with one another. We should have a community that cares for one another, and we're going to work on making sure that that does happen. But I do think that there's another part that's really quite important. And this is, I think, is very important for parents, not so much school administrators. I do think that we have to recognize that for some kids, and for all kids, in terms of dealing with this situation, they need to learn to behaviorally and mentally cope. Again, even if, as I said, even if a school has the zero tolerance policy, puts these policies into place, has the most effective intervention that's going on, it doesn't mean that there's going to be zero occurrence still. And kids will be the object of some teasing and some bullying. And I do believe that we have to be able to help kids learn to cope with situations and not assume that the environment is going to protect every kid under every instance. And we have to give kids some protective capacity to help themselves. And what I mean is that, we will get to this in just a moment, that teasing about things only has a negative impact if it fits into the puzzle. And I'll tell you what that means in a moment. We do have to think about what happens with the teaser and bullier's kind of equation. That different, which is usually what's talked about with teasing, and why kids tease one another is that they notice that they're different. They're engaging in some different behavior. They're doing something different. They look different, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the sources of teasing. It does not necessarily mean that they are bad or worthless. And we have to help some kids deal with that. And in some ways, we also have to help some kids not get affected by the words. And sometimes we want to think about perhaps sometimes owning the words. So in hip-hop culture, the N-word has been owned by a lot of artists. They have said, fine, we'll use that word, we'll take control of that word. We'll call each other that word. Somebody else can't do that, but we will do that. And we're not going to let that word bother us anymore. In many, I believe it started in New York City, in many gay pride parades, there are chants and banners that say, we're queer, we're here, get used to it. So they took that really negative word that was used to tease them and they owned it. And they said, we're not going to let that word get to us anymore. We're not going to let it bother us. And we're going to use it in a way so that we have power over that word. But what it means, I think, for little kids is something a little bit different. So let's go to the next one. We do have to help kids cope with teasing and bullying and mentally defend them. We have to make sure that they don't let the words fit. Okay? So when kids are teased about something, they do have to believe it's true in order for it to really bother them. Okay? So if some kid is told, you know, excuse me, this may be true in some cases, but, you know, your hair is blue. And a child is not going to be so bothered by that. It's like, you know, well, you're saying idiocy. This is silly behavior. This is a silly statement. My hair is not blue. I'm not accepting it. But they have to do the same kind of thing if they hear other words. We don't want to let them believe that it's true when they hear certain things about which they're being teased. We want to help them think carefully about themselves. So, parents, if kids say that they've been teased and told that they are a loser, we want to be able to help the kids think about, well, you know, let's really look at the evidence of that. Is there any real indication that this is true? Don't accept that word. Don't let it get to you, because it's not true. And kids need to recognize that that's something that they can do to mentally defend themselves. But then there's another part, because sometimes we do have this teaser's equation. The teaser's math is as follows. Different or negative, this different or negative label, whatever it is, means that you're bad or worthless. So if you're heavy or fat, you're bad or worthless. If you complete that equation in that way, the teaser wins. If kids look at themselves having other values and other characteristics other than that, they can move on.